how does Mourvedre taste different from other southern French grapes that also produced full-body red wines? And why is Bandol the only appellation to lead with it? Can Rosé age past a few years? And what would a 20-year-old Rosé taste like? And what would surprise you about the northern Italian grape and wine, Barbaresco? We're going to find out that tonight with tips and stories. And before I introduce my guest here, you are watching this video on the replay. If you're watching this video on the replay, please type in the comments the word replay. Let me know where you're logging in from. What city, town, what's in your glass if you are sipping on something. What's the weather like? I want to hear from you. And similarly, of course, if you're watching this live, please type the same. This is based on a recording that I did for my Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm Natalie McLean, and I offer online food and wine pairing classes. And you've just joined one of the most passionate groups of wine lovers who gather every Wednesday at 7 p.m. to talk to the most interesting people in the world of wine, like our guest. Now, I do want to hear from you as we're chatting. So tell us what stories you're enjoying, what tips. Do you have any questions that haven't been answered? I'll be there in the comments live, even though this video itself was pre-recorded. I'll be active in the comments with you. Now, before I introduce my guest, let me tell you that two of you are going to win a personally signed copy of his terrific new book entitled Bandol Wine and the Magic of Mourvèdre. All you have to do is email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com and tell me that you want to win a copy. I'll choose two people from those who randomly contact me. Or I'll choose randomly from those who contacted me. You can contact me randomly if you like. Back to our guest. He was born and raised in Kingston, Ontario. Andy James played tennis and loved to read and play Scrabble. He's always been fascinated with words, and he dreamed of becoming a novelist. After graduating from Queen's University, completing a graduate degree from the Mississippi State University, and then a PhD at the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland, he has subsequently become a professor in the School of Commerce at Meiji University in Tokyo, and has published a new book, which I just mentioned, Bandol Wine and the Magic of Mourvèdre, although he's published many other books, essays, and other writings. And he joins us now from his home in Tokyo. Welcome, Andy. It's so great to have you with us.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you.
All right. So before we dive into your wine career, tell us how you ended up in Japan, because you actually went to school very close to where I live in Ottawa. You were in Kingston, only 2 hours away. That's a long journey down to Mississippi and then over to Tokyo. So how did you get there?
Yeah, it's not such an exciting story, but my father was a guest professor in Japan just at the same time that I had finished my master's degree in Mississippi. So he said, Andy, do you want to come and visit me in Japan? And I said, Dad, I have no money. And he said, I'll pay for you. And I said, I'm going. So I went to visit him, and then I just ended up finding a job teaching at a high school. And I really enjoyed studying Japanese. I got hooked on that, and I enjoyed Japanese culture a lot. So one thing led to another, and then I ended up staying.
Wow. So you must be fascinated with Tokyo. What is it that you like about the culture? Why didn't you move back to Canada?
I don't know, Natalie. It's a difficult question because I do miss Canada. I miss my friends if they still remember me. But I think it's if you ask expats this question, you probably get a similar answer from most of them, that after a while living in a foreign country, it's like an investment. You end up not just developing roots there, but you become more marketable in the country where you settle down. And all of your work experience, professional experience, for me, it was in Japan. So if I go back to Canada, it's like starting all over again.
Right.
And before you know it, this is my life. So I think that's kind of the way it developed. But I also really liked the fact that Japanese food is great. Mm-hmm. Do you like Japanese food?
Oh, I do. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great cuisine. And then, of course, there's sake. So,
yeah.
Does Japan make grape-based wines? Like, is there much of a wine industry there?
Yeah, there is. The Japanese mentality is that they can overcome everything. So it probably has one of the worst climates in the world for growing grapes for wine, because it's very hot and humid and you get way too much rain. But they still try, and I would say that there are some places in the north of Japan, the northeastern part, that they can grow grapes and make pretty good wine. But yeah, it's an ongoing struggle, and I think a lot of people are fascinated with climate change. Maybe the northeastern part of Japan, which was too cold before, maybe something like Scandinavia, Denmark, and Sweden. Now maybe soon they'll be able to grow grapes they couldn't grow before and make good wine.
Wow, yeah, everything's changing. Canada too, of course.
Yeah.
So before you got into writing about wine, you wrote a book on Kingsley Amis, the English writer, and as you say, famous misanthrope. He was also famous for the novel Lucky Gem, among others. What drew you to him as a writer?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I came across with Amos early on was that he wrote that when he was writing his novels, he tried to imagine the reader's face, and he looked for signs of boredom in the reader's face. And he was a writer who was really acutely aware of his audience. He's extremely entertaining, but also polarizing. So some people hate him.
Why?
Well, because he's a misanthrope, so he hates. Some people said he hated women, but he basically just hated everybody. So,
equal opportunist hater.
Yeah, exactly. So that's who he was, and he offended a lot of people. But I found him extremely entertaining, but at the same time, the polarized aspect was really interesting to me, because I felt that people didn't really take him seriously. They looked at him as a kind of an entertainer, but not somebody worth really probing deeply. So that was what interested me.
I remember his famous description of a hangover, waking up with a hangover. All I remember was his mouth felt like a mausoleum and a small creature or a mouse had died in there.
Have you ever had a hangover like that?
No, not that extreme, but and I don't aspire to. But I thought that writing is spot on, the feeling on a lesser scale. And then you wrote about another British writer, Graham Greene. Were you drawn to him for the same reasons, or was he quite different?
Yeah, some are the same. I'm working on my biography of Greene now, actually, and I'll be finished in the middle of next year. But there are some similarities, and actually Amos wrote a monograph, a short biography of Graham Greene in the 1950s, which was lost. And Amos was always bemoaning the fact that Greene wouldn't die, and he just kept on writing novel after novel, so he had to keep updating his notes all the time.
How inconvenient.
So, how inconvenient for Amos. But Greene was also very entertaining, as I'm sure you know. And also polarizing. So he had very strong opinions about politics and also about religion. And I think this combination of being very entertaining but also touching some points that could be controversial was what interested me in Greene. Yeah.
Do you
and
try
I'm
to do
working
that?
on.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I'm working on this angle, which is basically. People haven't really looked at his novels as metafiction, and metafiction, to explain it simply, is just that the writing is a comment on writing.
Ah, okay.
So you can look in the text of the novels and you can see what comments about what it means to be a writer, what is a good novel, what is a bad novel, all of Greene's anxieties about writing. So that's the focus I'm taking.
Oh, that's interesting. And do you aspire to have those same elements in your own writing, to be polarizing, to be, well, entertaining? I'm sure that's what many writers aspire to be, but is that also something you try to incorporate yourself?
Not polarizing. No,
Okay.
I don't go for that. I try to be, you hope that everybody likes what you write, but I guess I do try to incorporate my literary training, which means that I try to find a problem or an unresolved issue in the wine world, and then I research it. And so basically, I pose a question. For example, why doesn't anybody drink Gewürztraminer anymore? And then I went, I go to Alsace and you ask the winemakers, why is it? What's going on with this? And so you begin with the question you don't know the answer to.
Okay, well, let us know the answer then, because you've just put it out there. So why don't people drink Gewürztraminer? Is it because we can't say it, or most people are uncomfortable pronouncing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think with what they told me in Alsace was that they blame the sommelier who keep on recommending dry white wines because they think that's what the public wants now. And so if you go to a restaurant, they hesitate to recommend a Gewürztraminer. And the other thing is the French no longer have 5-course meals, where Gewürztraminer comes at the end with the cheese plate or with the dessert. So a change in the diet.
Don't they make Gewürztraminer in a dry style though as well?
Yeah, they do, but it's still quite rich, and people are put off, and the perception is that Riesling or something that's lighter and drier and more chic is what people want now.
And yet we talk dry, drink sweet, and especially with all the cuisines we eat, it almost demands something with some sweetness because they're so spicy or hot or whatever. But also Gewürztraminer, I find one of the issues, Gewürz means spice, but it actually doesn't do well often with spicy foods. I don't think it has enough acidity the way Riesling does. And so, as you say, it's a rich wine, and it doesn't have that balancing acidity. I don't know if that's I don't think people even get that far with it after looking at it on the restaurant list. And it's like, no, I think I'll just pronounce Cabernet or whatever. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so you're also interested in the evolution of wine language and words, and you wrote some essays on wine manga, the drops of God. How does the manga series influence wine language, in your opinion?
Well, this was a manga series that was popular in the 2010s in Japan. Really popular, as you may know, and I think it's also now popular in the U.S. and maybe Canada too.
Yes.
So what I understand is that it really captivated an audience that was not familiar with wine. The people in their 20s and 30s who, some of them had disposable income, some didn't, but they never thought about drinking wine. They were probably beer drinkers, if anything. But the manga was sort of iconoclastic because some of the characters, the main character would describe wine in a very non-traditional way. So he would talk about this wine reminds me of butterflies in a spring garden, and the other people would look at him like he's crazy, or else some of them would say, "Oh, that's a great description," and so this was a common theme throughout, that you didn't have to know anything about wine. You could just describe it however you wanted with your own human experience. And I think this really attracted a lot of people.
Sure.
Also, the manga introduced a lot of wines between, say, $10 Canadian and $20. Okay. So people who aspired to a wine and food lifestyle and were sort of put off by wine language really got into it through this doorway, I guess you'd say.
Right, yeah, the television series is very popular. And manga, forgive my ignorance, it's part of the anime world, or animated, not cartoons, but I guess we call it like the graphic novels. It's kind of all in that genre.
Yeah, it's similar to what they call graphic novels in English. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So now, during a sabbatical in 2021, you lived in Bandol, in southern France, about 45 minutes away from Marseille. Tell us about this idyllic town on the French Riviera. What does it look like?
Well, I think one thing that it looks like it's full of old people.
Okay.
It's a retirement town, really. But in the summertime, the population is about 8,000 people, but in the summer you get maybe 3 times that amount. People just flood to the rush to the southern coastline, to the Riviera, and Bandol is one of the places they go to in search of sun. So it's a very quiet town. It's much quieter than some of the neighboring places like Antibes or Nice or Marseille. Full of retirees, but they have beautiful beaches and they have great wine. So I think you can enjoy a really typical French small town experience if you go there. But you can also do a lot of water activities and of course enjoy great wine.
Great. And so why did you want to write a book about, how do you pronounce it? Bandol? Or is it Bandol?
Bandol.
Bandol? Okay.
Bandol, yeah.
We'll get some pronunciation lessons here. So why did you want to write a book about Bandol wines?
Well, I'd been to Bandol once. I think it was 2016. And I was introduced to the Mourvedre grape then, and the Bandol red wines and the Bandol Rosés, and I was really impressed with them. So I knew they made good wine, and I also knew that there were no books written in English about Bandol, which was interesting to me. I thought, wow, this is really an intriguing region with a really unique grape and unique wines, but no one has taken the time to write a book in English about it. There had been 3 books in French. The last one was 2013, and then before that 2006, and then 1991. But to be honest, none of them were very good from my perspective because they didn't introduce all of the producers. They just focused on a few star producers, and they didn't actually go take the trouble of interviewing the producers and asking them what they thought about things. So I thought, yeah, maybe I can do it.
And that's what you did. You interviewed, was it 70 producers, like wineries and grape growers?
I think I succeeded with 54. Okay. When I was there were about 65 wineries, but some of them are owned, like 2 wineries would be owned by the same person with the same winemaker. So probably I could have gone to 60. And I succeeded with going to 54 and interviewing the owners and the winemakers and the viticulturalists. So I did my best.
You did well. And how is this book different? Like, how is it organized versus the previous books on Bandol? Like, so you interviewed all of the winemakers, which is substantial. What's the format of the book, and how does it differ from the others?
I'm sorry, I lost you there, Natalie.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. So what is the format of your book, and how does it differ from the others?
The big difference is, 2 big differences. One is that I tried to include everybody because, as you may know, there are a couple of books about Bandol. One is called Adventures on the Wine Trail by Kermit Lynch.
Yes.
Where he wrote a chapter on Bandol, just a chapter. But it's only about Domaine Tempier, which is his client, one of his star clients.
He's an importer in California, famous one. Yeah.
So that's one, and then another book is by another importer, Neil Rosenthal, and he wrote about his client, Chateau Pradot.
Okay.
So you've got these 2 presentations of 2 different domains, but there's still, when I was there, still 63 other wineries. So. Right. This kind of interested me, and then I looked at the French books, and they were both out of date, and also because at the time of the 2013 book, for example, there were only about 45 wineries in Bandol. Okay. So in the span of 10 years, you have 20 new wineries.
Wow. And how much wine does the region produce if you estimate it in bottles or whatever?
Well, I guess I could estimate it. One way is in hectares. It's about 1,700 hectares. It's about a little bit smaller than Crozes-Hermitage, and it's about the same size as Margaux in Bordeaux.
Oh, one estate. So
no, the Margaux appellation.
Oh, okay, gotcha. In Bordeaux, sorry. You interviewed 50 producers, big and small.
Yeah.
You had tasting notes and reports on how the wine were made. And you also feature 25 of your favorite bottles from Bandol with photographs and food pairings, which is a nice addition. I assume you visited Domaine Tempier, and was it one of the most respected or exalted wineries in the region, or was it just Kermit Lynch's client, and therefore that's why he wrote about it?
No, it's it's a place you have to be a little bit careful of if you're a Canadian, because it's always crawling with Americans.
Americans are watching this and listening to this, so be careful.
No, I always find it interesting because when you go there, you will hear American accents flying around all over the place, because Domaine Tempier is very well represented in the U.S. by Kermit Lynch, who really sells his wines and represents them well. So Americans do make pilgrimages to Domaine Tempier to buy the wines on site and to taste the rosé and the white wines too, and look out over the vineyards while they're tasting them. It's well worth the visit. They are using the original house, which is about 200 years old, is still in use.
Oh wow!
So for historic reasons, it's very nice. The funny thing is that most of their wine, almost all of their wine, is allocated, which means that it's sold as soon as it's bottled. So if you want to go there and buy the red wine, within about 2 or 3 months of it being bottled and commercialized, it's all sold out at the winery.
Wow!
And they'll have some rosé and white left, but everything else you have to ask Kermit Lynch for.
Huh. Well, he's got a lock on that. And
Yeah.
aside from Americans and Canadians crawling through the vineyards, you mentioned that there's peacocks. So are they just native to the region?
No, they're not native at all. It's just a quirky story about one particular winery that I visited. And this winery has 14 peacocks. Really? So when I went there for an interview, the son, who is in his 30s, sat down with me at a table outside of their house. And I just see these peacocks strutting around in the background. And I said, wow, this is incredible. You've got peacocks. And he said, yes, 14 of them. It's worse than a death sentence.
Why?
And I said, why? Like you, I thought, well, they're beautiful, picturesque. And he said, well, because they live to be 40 years old. And they're completely useless animals. But I don't know if that was the reason. He said that his father believes that they're the reincarnations of their ancestors.
Huh.
So maybe he thought they were a little bit creepy.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. Do they eat the grapes?
I don't think so. They just strut around and look beautiful.
So you have been to a party where they served a 20-year-old rosé. Can rosé really age that long? Like, what did it taste like?
Yeah, well, actually, I held one party where there was a 20-year-old rosé, I guess, because it was a 2004, and we had a party at our house, and I had received this bottle from one of the producers, Domaine de l'Olivette, and I was saving it up for these two really great producers from Bandol to try to surprise them and see what they thought about it, and because they don't drink the wine, the rosé that's that old. They think
usually
it's
the advice, is to drink it within a year or two of the vintage. Like rosé is meant to be consumed fresh, young. Yeah.
Yeah, so we shared it together, and I probably had drunk more old rosé than they had, so that was interesting for me. But I think the interesting thing about old rosé is that it has a lot of interesting contrasts. That bottle in particular, I remember, had an aroma of petrol and candied fruits. Candied orange slices. So immediately two very, very sort of contradictory, contrasting aromas. And in the mouth, it was quite light, surprisingly light, but not really oxidized, not terribly oxidized, but it had notes of sherry as well. And then in the aftertaste, it still had structure, and it was still firm, but the interesting thing is that as the wine loses its fruitiness and its primary fruit, with Bandol, with a lot of Mourvedre, it gets really round in the body, almost chewy.
Oh, wow!
So
And
you get these really nice sensations.
So you liked it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, yeah.
And do you age your rosés, like, or just from that region, or what advice would you give to people when it comes to rosé, or that?
Well, the only two rosés that I know which actually have aging capacity are the Bandol rosés that have a lot of Mourvedre, because Mourvedre is the key. And if they have a lot of Grenache and Cinsault, the other main grapes, they don't age quite as well. But the other area is Tavel.
Right.
Tavel is in exactly, and they make basically all Grenache, but these are maceration rosés, so they let the juice sit on the skins for several hours because they have a minimum color requirement. They have to have a particular darkness threshold that it goes past.
Okay.
So this gives it some tannin, which helps to preserve the wine, and more body. So Tavel can easily go 10, 20 years. I had a 25-year-old bottle of Tavel Rosé that was great.
Wow, I didn't realize that. And they don't do the Saunier, the Saunier method of bleeding off, like letting the first run juice, bottling the first run juice. They just do maceration?
So people actually erroneously say that in Tavel they do Saunier Rosé, but Saunier, as you said, is the bleeding off. So it's an interesting sort of side story, but the way that people used to make rosé in Bandol long ago was they'd have a tank for red wine grapes, and then they would let it sit for a little while, for a few hours or a few days, and then they would, as you say, draw off some of the free run juice, and then they take that and they make a rosé wine.
Yeah.
And the reason they did that was because they wanted to strengthen the red wine. Because at that time, the red wine was judged by how powerful it was. That was the power and the alcoholic strength was a sign of quality.
Right.
So you could concentrate the red and at the same time get some light juice and make a rosé and sell the rosé right away. So people don't do that anymore, but some people in Bandol still take, like, say 5% or 10% of the juice from a red wine tank and then add it to the rosé wine.
Okay.
Because it makes it a little more explosive. They have some reasons they do it. Some of them just do it because their parents did it and their grandparents did it.
Right. And in Tavel, if I understand correctly, just makes rosé, right? They don't make a red or a white. They are dedicated 100% to rosé. It's my personal favorite rosé style. I love there's Chateau d'Icaria and all kinds. In Bandol, what percentage is rosé of the wine they produce?
Right now, about 75%.
Oh, okay. It's mostly. All right.
Yeah. So it's a kind of a funny contradiction. Most of the winemakers will like to say that they're red wine makers because red wine is more prestigious, and you can get into Michelin restaurants with if you have a good red wine. But rosé wine is the wine of pleasure. So 75% now.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so you also had a blind tasting with two Bandol wines. One was priced, you said, about €4 or $6, and the other at €23, so $36. What happened there?
Well, that was an interesting one. I had gone to a winery called Mas Therese. Mas means like a farm. So Teresa's farm, I guess it would be the translation. But it's really a really humble place. And they didn't have any Bandol wine that was ready, so they gave me their Carignan table wine, or IGP wine. So it was €4.80, I think, and I was quite impressed. It was very smooth, not terribly complex, but easy to drink, fresh, and it did have a few nuances. So I bought a couple of bottles, brought it home, and about a year later, I had a dinner party, and there were 5 guests at the dinner party. So just as a little bit of fun, I decided to do a blind tasting, and I gave them the Mas Therese wine with the €23 wine, as you said, and I said, "Which wine do you prefer? Just tell me which wine you like better." And tell me which one you think is the more expensive one. One of them is €4 and one is €23. Yeah. And so they all looked at each other like suspiciously, like, what's going on here? and they all preferred the Masterès wine, and they all except for one person thought the Masterès wine was more expensive.
Really?
And one of them said, I prefer the Masterès wine. They didn't know what it was at that point. It was just
Sure.
blind bottle 1, blind bottle 2. But I prefer this bottle because it's very easy to drink and very smooth, and it's obviously more sophisticated. But using the power of reverse logic, I would say that the wine that I don't like as much must be the more expensive one. Therefore, and everybody looked at her like, well, can you do that? Is that legal? But so she was right. She was right. The reason is simply that I think Carignan can be really easy to drink, very supple. It has no sort of complications. It's not tannic. And Bandol can be quite fearsomely tannic in its youth, and a little bit thin and constricting. So the people were being honest about the fact that they preferred the easygoing wine. But
Sure.
I still can't really figure out why they thought it must be the more expensive one. That still baffles me a little bit.
Well, maybe they associated liking with price quality. But were they wine knowledgeable people, or were they sort of everyday kind of wine consumers?
Yeah, they all have wine cellars. They're quite knowledgeable.
Okay.
They live in the south of France, but they're not wine experts.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't really like Bandol red wine in its youth because it is quite powerful. So, yeah, a lot of people in the south of France will still drink very easygoing IGPs and bag-and-box wine because it's so supple and easy to drink.
And when you say powerful, do you mean tannic mostly, or what is Mourvedre in its youth, the grape? How does it taste?
Well, it's a little bit grumpy and growly. It's Mourvedre is an antioxidant, so it can be quite closed, not very expressive at times. It needs oxygen. So you need to aerate it. You need to open it up a day or even 2 days in advance. It can also be quite thin and a little bit harsh if it's grown in the wrong places. It needs some water reserves, but it also needs to be challenged to have lots of sunshine, to be close to the sea. So you get a lot of bright red fruit, I would say, and spice, licorice spice. You also get a garrigue, an element of herbal, south of France herbs in the nose. In the body, it's actually quite narrow. It's quite smart. It's not like Grenache, very plump and round. So usually Mourvedre needs to have a blending partner. It's much better if you blend it with Grenache, for example, or Cinsault, which are more generous and sort of fill out the body a little bit.
That sounds like Cabernet Merlot duo, like they need each other.
Yeah, exactly. Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot, it's a good comparison, yeah.
Yeah, and you say it's an antioxidant, so aren't most big red grapes of that nature, or is this unique to Mourvedre when you say it's an antioxidant kind of grape that needs oxygen to open up?
I think, the other one that's like this, Nebbiolo can be like that too, because they sort of close in on themselves and don't reveal anything at certain times in their evolution. I don't know that Cabernet Sauvignon is so much like that, but yeah, there probably are other grapes, as you say, that the big tannic red grapes that are like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens as it ages? You said it becomes more round. What else happens as Mourvedre ages?
Well, one of the interesting stories that I was told by actually the Domaine Tempier technical director, Daniel Ravier, who's a great interview subject and taught me a lot. He said that, Bandol, the evolution is not linear. It goes up and down.
Okay.
So people are often tricked by it, because you could get, say, a 5-year-old bottle and it's gone to sleep. The nose is dumb. It's not very, very evocative, very expressive. And you think, what's going on here? And then, you open it up a year later, another bottle of the same vintage, and it's beautifully opened up, and everything's going well. And then the next stage that's interesting in...
Sorry, what causes the...
I don't know. Nobody really seems to know. It's just Mourvedre is a grape that just can keep on going and going and going 20, 30, 40 years, but it has stages where it shuts down. And then it comes back to life again. So even after 20 years, you might think, people often do think apparently that, oh, the wine's dead, it's gone, there's nothing left. But Daniel Ravier, he always said to me, but just wait. It usually has a second or a third or a fourth life.
Wow, good to know. So you would recommend generally decanting Mourvedre before you drink it? I guess you were saying it could take a day or two.
Yeah, I'm not really a big decanting guy because in France most people don't decant, and I guess they sort of educated me in that. Don't decant, especially with younger wines. What I prefer to do is open it a day or two in advance, and let it breathe. You can also do a little carafe. You can, as they say in French, carafe. You just pour it into a decanter right before you drink. To sort of expose it to air and shake it up a little bit. But with the older ones, I never would decant older wines.
Sure, because they could fall apart.
You asked another question. Well, I mean, I always think that older wines are like, you should treat them like you treat your favorite grandmother. She doesn't want to be jostled or shaken up. Treat her with respect. Give her some space. Give her some time, and she'll probably be okay. So that's the way I treat the old wines.
Right, makes sense. But when you say you open it, are you just opening the bottle? Because I didn't think that would do much, because the airspace is so small. If you just take the cork out of a bottle, does that really do anything for the wine? Like if you're doing that a day beforehand?
Yeah, for me it does. I mean, I was surprised too, but it really works wonders. So if you leave it for even 12 hours with the cork out, you'll see a significant difference with Mourvedre, with a lot of Mourvedre. 1 or 2 days. 1 day it should be completely expressive.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, and so why is Bandol the only French appellation where the Mourvedre grape is dominant? Why aren't there others? Why is this a specialist of the region?
Yeah, that's a good question, Natalie. And I didn't really understand it myself for a long time, but the appellation next door to Bandol is a huge one called Côte de Provence. And as I'm sure you know, and Côte de Provence also has Mourvedre. They can use Mourvedre, and they do, but it's more Grenache and Cinsault, Syrah, Carignan. So Mourvedre from Côte de Provence is not very interesting. I don't know exactly the reasons why, but one thing for sure is that in Côte de Provence, for example, they can irrigate, and they do irrigate. They have mostly inland vineyards, so they're flatter, and they irrigate. They have higher yields. So the Mourvedre is totally different there. There's no tension. There's no power and sort of how would you describe it? It doesn't really go the distance.
Right. They're watering it down, literally, like they're giving it an easy life, whereas, as you said, grapes need to suffer. They need to be challenged.
Yeah, and even the ones that don't get that royal treatment in Côte de Provence, they just don't have the complexity that Bandol does. So I think a lot of it has to do with the sea. They have a saying. They say that good Mourvedre has to see the sea.
Oh, I wonder
so,
what it gets
or maybe
from the
even
sea.
have its feet. Oh. Well, it gets the salinity, it gets the saltiness. So even if it doesn't rain in Bandol, you get very little rain, like 400 or 500 milliliters of rain per year. So a very small rainfall, but you get the wind blowing all the time, and there's a lot of speculation that the wind also carries salt from the sea, which goes over the grapes. So there's a salinity, there's a freshness in the wines, even though they don't have acidity. And it's particular to the Bandol area. I also had a very good Mourvedre recently in South Africa. I was in South Africa for a wine conference, and they had Mourvedre there, and I was very impressed. And the winemaker said to me, "Yeah, because our Mourvedre can also see the sea."
Okay. Wow.
So I guess I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Okay. And what are your favorite pairings when it comes to Mourvedre? What do you like to have with a glass of Mourvedre?
Well, if it's a rosé.
Oh, okay. Start with the rosé.
Well, the red kind. Okay. Okay. Well, I have a few. I guess. Starting with the rosé, I would say baked fish is a big one.
Okay.
I like to do, say, baked white fish with lemon and garlic and rosemary. That's always a favorite. I also like ratatouille. Is very nice. Ratatouille with that. I also like oysters, all kinds of shellfish, chicken, carbonara pasta. It can really go with a lot of things.
Sure. And the big reds?
The big reds, pepper steak is great. What else would be good? Yeah, we had a lot of magret de canard, the duck breast in Bandol. Okay. That was a real favorite. So duck breast with in an orange sauce.
That sounds good. And you also had a story from when you were picking in the Sauvignon Blanc vineyard. You spent a half day picking. What were you doing there? Was this in Bandol as well?
Yeah, well, it was in Bandol, and I was wondering what I was doing there. What had I done to deserve that half day in the vineyard?
Do you mean that
it was quite a
positive or negative? It's hard work.
No, it was rather trying because I had spent 4 days picking in a different vineyard with my wife, and we accepted the invitation to try picking in this Sauvignon Blanc IGP table wine vineyard at another winery for a half day. And in Bandol, they only pick for a half day because it's too hot. So they start at 7 o'clock in the morning and they go to 12 o'clock or to 1 o'clock in the afternoon and call it a day. Because if you keep picking in the afternoon, the acidity in the grapes goes down.
Right.
And it's so hot, like 30, 35 degrees, that the grapes can also become oxidized before they get to the cellar. So it wasn't just my choice to only do a half a day.
Okay.
It was a full day. But anyways, so I wanted to experience what what things are like in this IGP vineyard, because basically I had been told that Bandol is really special because the yields, the amount of grapes that you can take, that you can grow in a hectare of the vineyard is like 40 hectoliters per hectare, and for an IGP it's 100, so more than double. You can irrigate in the IGP, in the table wine one, but you can't irrigate in Bandol. Lots of differences like that, the green harvest. So I thought, okay, I'd really like to try harvesting and see what it's like. So when I got to the vineyard with my wife, it was just a wall of green, which you wouldn't see in a Bandol vineyard, because of course they can't water, so you don't get as much foliage. But also you have to do green harvest. You have to trim and cut and get rid of a lot more grapes. So it was just a wall of green, and I had to penetrate the wall of green, which is really kind of prickly. You've got gloves on, but still it's pretty tough. And then try to pry the grapes away from the tree, and then cut them and put them into your basket. Now I'm getting old, Natalie, so my back was killing me after 4 days of picking before. And every time I bent over, it was like just a wall of pain was going through my back. So I tried kneeling, but if you kneel, you have to get up again, and then you have to move over a little more, and that's really tiring. So I thought, well, I'll try sitting down, and then I can reach out with both arms, and I can pick the grapes in, say, a 2 meter radius, and then I'll scuttle over like a crab to the next area. So I thought I was onto something here. And after about 5 minutes, the foreman, forewoman who's standing on the back of a flatbed truck with her arms crossed, she bellows out from across the vineyard. She says, "No sitting!" And I turned to the German woman beside me who was picking, and I said, "I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid for this."
Doesn't matter.
But she was pretty serious. Doesn't matter. Yeah, you're setting a bad example. So it was a tough experience, because really it's just overgrown with grapes, and you can really see the difference just in the grapes if you eat them, because it's like eating grapes from the supermarket.
Huh. So
if you know what I mean.
This was a
just
green harvest?
You buy a bunch of green grapes to eat.
Sure. Yeah. And
no, there's no
green
harvest for that. They
okay.
grow as many grapes as you can.
Oh wow! So they were going to use this in table wine.
This was the harvest.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. Wow. And
this was going right into the tank. Yeah.
Okay. And what does IGP
it's
stand for?
an indication of indication. It's indication de géographique protégée. So it's a protected geographic indication. It means basically table wine. It's a new fancy name they use in France for table wine. And what it means is that you can grow just about any grapes you want. Yeah, you can irrigate, you can age it however you want, but they will say it's IGP from Bandol. Like, it doesn't say Bandol, but it has the name of the region that includes Bandol.
Okay.
So the region is delimited, but there's basically no rules. It's table wine.
Okay, gotcha. All right. And so there were some famous residents who lived in the town of Bandol, some back to writers again. Tell us about them.
So it was interesting for me, this experience, just to follow that up, just because another winemaker had told me. He said, I often tell the visitors to the winery that the difference between a table wine and a Bandol wine is that the grape in a table wine vineyard is a lazy grape. He just sits there and gathers up the sun. It's nice and flat and fertile. He gets lots of water. He has an easy life. And then the Bandol grape is the worker. I mean, he has to really work to get his water. He's living on these extreme slopes with not very much soil. The sun is beating down on him or her, and it's a tough life. So the Bandol wine grape is the worker, and the table wine grape is the lazy couch potato.
I love that comparison. And there were a couple famous resident writers in the town. Who were they?
Yeah, well, D.H. Lawrence is probably the most famous one for English people, because D.H. Lawrence is pretty well known for his novels. But he went to Bandol twice, and basically for convalescence, but also because his wife Frida was German, and this was at the time when there was a lot of backlash against Germans in England. So they found it much easier to live in the south of France. And he wrote a few stories and some poems in Bandol. He famously said something along the lines of he liked the food a lot, but the people not so much. And yeah. So he was one, and then Catherine Mansfield as well. She came 1917, I believe, because her brother had been killed accidentally at the front in World War I by friendly fire. And so she went to Bandol to recover from the shock of this and spent about 3 months. But there's several famous people who have stayed in Bandol for a year or months, and their names and plaques are on various houses around in the town.
Wow, cool. All right, let's switch regions now. You interviewed Angelo Gaia, famous Italian winemaker from Piedmont. You spent 5 hours interviewing him in Japan. What did you learn from him? What did you take away from that?
Yeah, well, actually, I interviewed him in Barbaresco. I went to Barbaresco and met him there. So it was 5 hours. Yeah, it was wonderful. I guess the big thing about Mr. Gaia is that he's just a very humble person. And you don't meet a lot of people like that who are so humble, so genuine in the wine world. I don't think he really has an ego. He just is a tireless promoter and a worker for making his Barbaresco wines and the Nebbiolo grape, making them known throughout the world. So he takes time. He's now 82 years old, I believe, and he's not retired at all. But he was just amazing. He told me all about how much he loved Japan. He told me about coming to Japan and walking through a park and hearing the cicadas and some experiences he'd had with Japanese food. And I just was really impressed with somebody who is so accessible and so passionate. It was a wonderful experience.
And how did you talked and tasted about Barbaresco, which is a lighter red wine that he, among many, that he's famous for. How has it changed?
Well, I mean, Barbaresco and Barolo were the two most famous regions, as you know, that are right next door to each other, and they both use the Nebbiolo grape. So it has, of course, with global warming, with climate change, the wines have probably gone up 1 or 2 notches in alcohol. So maybe 25 years ago, the standard would have been 13.5% alcohol, and now you regularly have 15 or 15.5. Wow. I think also what has happened in a good sense, in a really good sense, is that you see that people have really updated their techniques in the vineyard and also in the cellar. So you have much. You don't have your grandfather's old stinking oak barrels that should have been discarded decades ago, and are infecting your wines with all kinds of crazy bacteria. Those problems have been solved. You have a lot of techniques now in the vineyard to introduce freshness into the wine. You have everybody doing basically organic wine growing, a lot of biodynamic wine growing, winemaking as well. So I think the wines are getting better and better, but the challenge still is the extreme weather. Right. They have months and months with not a drop of rain. They have a lot more heat than they used to have. So what do? And they're looking at, say, planting grapes on northern facing slopes that would have been considered for until now to be areas where you planted, say, Barbera or a lighter variety or white grapes. And now they're even thinking about planting maybe Nebbiolo,
Huh. Yeah, because famously the southern slopes were always the prestigious bottles, whether it was Italy or France or whatever. You knew the south-facing, because it would get the early morning sun, but also not the harsher western sun or whatever. I'm getting all my geographies mixed up. But yeah, that is changing, that they're actually going to go with northern exposure for less heat, less sun. With climate change. Yeah,
and a lot of them also are doing grafting too now. So they graft, they identify really sturdy, good Massal selection vines. The vines that are like from pre-phylloxera times, or are not clones. Ones that have been used and have been replanted over and over, but they're not using the clones anymore. They're trying to get vines that can be drought resistant, that have more individuality than the clones. So there's a lot of things going on that they're trying to do, and they're doing better and better wine.
That's great. Good to hear. So speaking of wine, let's taste. What 2 wines do you have with you today?
Well, yeah. Do you want to start with the Rosé?
Sure.
Okay.
Tell us about it. Maybe hold it up to the camera there. We'll also put a link in the show notes so that people can see which wines and possibly maybe find them.
Okay, so this is the...
nice and pale. All right.
This is my
and which
Bandol. It's called Le Galantin.
Okay.
And it's Domaine Le Galantin is from Bandol. And it's a 2020 Rosé, so it's now 3 years old. Promising.
Yeah.
It's not the Rosé of the year.
Right. That's true. And how does it taste?
Well, we'll try it right now and see.
Okay.
I thought I would show you what I usually do with Rosé.
That's
Rosé
a big
and white.
glass. A big
I like this
glass. that I associate with Pinot Noir, but you're using it for Rosé. Yeah.
Yeah, this is from Lehman's Synergy white wine glass, and I use this a lot for rosé and for white, unless it happens to be a Riesling or, for example, an unoaked Chardonnay. I mean, something that you want to emphasize the structure more, the minerality, for example. So, if you really want the wine to expand and to get all the aromas collecting, this is what I like.
Huh. We'll have to link to that glass too in the show notes. I'll follow up with you after our chat because I'm intrigued by that glass. It's got, for those who are just listening to the podcast, nice round bowl, then it comes up a bit more tightly at the top, so it's concentrating those aromas.
Yeah.
Lovely. And so what do you get from this? Yeah, what do you get from that?
Well, it's now 3 years old, and what's happening with a good Bandol, what always happens with a good Bandol Rosé, is that you get the fresh fruits turn into more sort of, I wouldn't say candied fruits, but almost like an overripe. This is a peach aroma, but it's more now like an overripe peach. So you get that, a little bit of candied aroma, and in the mouth, it's much rounder than it was before. It's a little bit soft, but there's still tension there, and it's really quite round, almost chewy, which is a really indescribably pleasurable experience. Some people don't like it so much; they prefer the freshness and the vitality in a 1 year old or 2 year old rosé. But as it gets older, it gets round.
And by
which
rounder,
I like.
is it kind of losing its acidity, or the fruit is blossoming more, and the acidity or perception of it is going down? Is that what's happening?
It's hard to there's not much acidity to begin with, and that's something that's very hard to understand. Some winemakers would tell me that they would measure the acidity, and it's really quite negligible, and but it feels like it has acidity. And this is coming from the minerality, from the salinity. It has a sensation of a mineral freshness, which kind of tricks your mind into thinking it had more acidity than it does. I think it's probably just the vibrant fresh fruit becomes a little bit plumper over time. I can't really describe it any better than that.
No, that's good. That gives us a sense of it. And then what is the second wine that you have?
This moving on so quickly. Well, I was going to take another sip of my other one. Okay.
We've got a schedule here to maintain, Andy.
That's
just
true.
kidding.
Okay,
I'm curious
Natalie.
about the other one.
Okay. The other one is a Barolo, and this is it's GD Vidra Barolo from the Rivera crew, which is in Novello. So I'll just pour a little bit of this one.
And again, we'll link to that in the show notes. Now you've got another odd-looking glass that is fascinating. This one is a bit curvy. Is this the same company?
No, this is Riedel. This is Riedel's Wine Wing series. And this is a glass made for Nebbiolo and also Pinot Noir. You can use, they recommend either one. I like it. It's really good again for letting the wine breathe, which not only Mourvedre but also Nebbiolo likes. It likes to breathe, but it also collects the aromas quite nicely.
At the top, yeah. I wonder why they put that little curvy thing in. It's almost like there's a waistline gathering, and then it goes out again with the small hips. I don't know what that's doing for the wine. Maybe agitating it as you swirl it or something. I don't know.
I think it encourages aeration, But if you, for the listeners out there who are a little bit skeptical, I mean, if you had, say, for example, a Pinot Noir glass, that might work okay, like the Pinot Noirs that sort of go up like this.
Yeah, the bowls. Yeah.
But I think with Nebbiolo it likes to breathe a little more. So I like this one being a little more open.
Open at the top, yeah.
Yeah. And if you have, say, a Cabernet Sauvignon glass, it tends to be a little bit narrower and more constricting.
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't think it works as well with Nebbiolo. It really needs to stretch out its limbs and express itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a taste of that. I think they called Nebbiolo the Pinot Noir of Piedmont. I don't know if it's or if I'm mixing that up with something else, but it's expressive.
Yeah, well, they used to call, they say Barolo is the king of wines and the wine of kings.
Okay.
So I feel
What
like
do you
a
get
king
from-
tonight.
Okay. Yes, I know. You're in Tokyo, so you're 13 hours ahead of me. So it's morning my time when we're recording this. So thus I'm sticking to water, but you're just
A
getting
wise
warmed up
choice.
for your evening. Yeah. I just cannot stomach a Barolo before breakfast. That might be a book title, Barolo before breakfast.
Yeah, maybe.
So what are you getting from that wine?
Well, this is quite savory in the nose. It's quite herbal, really lovely, sort of a heather aroma combining with tobacco, sweet tobacco, cherries. You have always not always, but almost always in Barolo, you can find tar and roses, and it sounds like a rock band, right? Tar
Yeah,
and
it
roses,
does.
but not quite. But it's a really a nice series of combinations there, sweet and sour, and then in the mouth, what I really love about Barolo the most is in the mouth. It's again, it's quite savory. It has a balsamic element to it, good acidity. It's rich, but it never feels heavy, which is really an incredible thing because this wine is 14.5%, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels very light until you swallow it, and then you get the tannin kicking in, and it's quite a nice drying finish, but it is a powerful finish. So it's a lovely wine.
Interesting.
I wish you could join me for a glass.
Yes, I wish I could, but later. And what would you pair with that?
For Barolo, I like steak again. I like beef, but
Sure.
one of my favorite ones is probably risotto. Porcini risotto, mushroom risotto is great with Barolo.
Lots of umami and some
Yeah.
of the wild, feral, fungal kind of aromas you sometimes get in Barolo
You
and
got
northern
it.
Italian wines. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
what-
Yeah.
Truffle accented risotto is also
Mhm.
beautiful, I find, with those wines.
Yeah.
Not the chocolate kind, of course, but the funky kind.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I can't believe how fast time has flown. So let us go to our lightning round. You can keep sipping if you like, Andy.
Okay.
But is there something that you believe about wine which others disagree?
Well, I guess the one thing that I mentioned earlier is about decanting. I don't think that decanting really serves much of a purpose. I told you about my grandmother theory. With older wines, often you meet American, again I say Americans, maybe Canadians are guilty of this too, but there are a lot of Barolo lovers and in Canada and the US, and they often talk about double decanting and triple decanting. I guess they really want to make sure the wine is perfectly awake and expressive when they drink it, but what I like to do is to see the wine evolve over 2 or 3 hours of drinking a bottle slowly with my wife, having it with a meal. And as I said, you can open it up a day before if it's really a powerful wine, and then drink it slowly. So I've become a convert to that way of thinking as opposed to the decanting. Except for, say, Cabernet Sauvignon, like a Bordeaux wine that has a lot of sediment, or some wines do benefit from decanting, but not that many.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you about your favorite wine book, but first show us your book on screen. So for those who are watching the video version, they can see it. For those who are listening,
Okay.
we will put a link in the show notes. So this is your beautiful book on Bandol and Mourvedre. The Magic of Mourvèdre looks beautiful. And you want to do a little flip through the book. Is it? Are there any sort of maps or anything like that? Or pictures?
Yeah, we have a couple of maps in the beginning,
Okay.
but I have a lot of pictures like this of
Okay.
the interviews that I did with people.
Oh, lovely vineyard shot.
And then I have, as you mentioned before, the iconic wines. Not iconic wines, but the 25 wines that I like the most.
Oh, there
we
they
did
are,
it
yeah.
like this. So
The bottles.
my
Beautiful
wife took these
shots.
beautiful pictures. Yeah.
Oh, she is a photographer. That's lovely. My goodness. Those
Yeah,
are beautiful
thank
pictures.
you.
And you were saying, just while we're looking at the book, that people can order this directly from the publisher and get 40% off the price?
I'm sorry, I lost you again there.
Okay,
Go ahead.
no problem. You were saying that people can order the book directly from the publisher and get 40% off the price?
That's right. So if you go to Cambridge Scholars Publishing, which is the name of the publisher, and you go to their website and you go ahead and put the book into your basket, create an account just like you would on Amazon, for example. Then when you check out, you can put in a code. It says, discount codes, and you can put in Bandol, Bandol 40, and you get a 40% discount.
Awesome. And we will definitely put that all in the show notes as well.
Okay.
And then also, do you have another favorite wine book that you've read?
Yeah, I guess I always think that the last wine book I read is the one I like the most. So I've read so many good ones, but I recently read this one. It's a big monster here.
Wow, on Burgundy. Beautiful cover. Big illustrated cover. What is it? 9 centuries in the heart of Burgundy. Is this about wine or the whole region, like as a whole?
Yeah, it's about this place called the Cellier aux Moines, which means the cellar of the monks.
Oh.
And it's a vineyard in Givry in the south of Burgundy, in the Côtes Chalonnaises. And I had a little exchange with the owner of this winery. He bought the winery in 2004. He was a businessman before, and he bought it. But he was very interested in the history of it. It's a 900-year-old history, and it was owned by monks. And the monks built walls around their vineyard and protected it and kept it going. And then it was privatized about 200 years ago. So the owner of this, the current owner, was very interested in the history. And he teamed up with a French historian to write this book, and it's, it has, of course, lots of beautiful illustrations like this.
Wow. Yeah, gorgeous.
But
grapes and vineyards.
If you want to know about the history of Burgundy and how the monks, the church, contributed to the development of wine, it's a great book for that.
Excellent. Again, we'll put it in the show notes. And do you have a favorite wine gadget?
Yes, I do. I brought it right here. Do you know what this is?
I do not. It looks like a little pedometer to measure your steps. What is that?
It's actually, you got the last part of the word right. It's a thermometer.
Oh, okay. For your wine temperature?
Yeah. So what you do is you put it into the glass, and you just push the button, and it tells you temperature.
Okay. So you don't leave it in the glass or touch the wine, but just the temperature above in the air is going to tell you what your wine temperature is?
Yeah, so you can see there it's 23.5.
Okay.
And so it's quite accurate. You just point it directly at the wine. And I like this a lot because, for example, with the Rosé wine today, before I came on to talk with you, I put it in the fridge and chilled it, took it out and poured a half a glass to make sure the wine was okay. And I measured the temperature, and it was 6.8 degrees, which is too cold, right?
Yeah.
After 15 minutes, when I had finished tasting it and making some notes, it was 17.1 degrees, which is a little bit too warm.
Right.
So I think people are not always really aware or sensitive to temperatures. I mean, you see people putting on frozen sleeves on their whites and their rosés and chilling the heck out of it, and that doesn't do it any service. And then with red wines, you see them often served at room temperature, but in the summer that could be 25 or 26 degrees.
Right. Yeah, you're
so
right.
I like this gadget.
Absolutely.
I like this gadget just for raising your awareness. That's all.
And is there a brand name or an official name for that thermometer?
Doesn't seem to be. No,
okay.
I think
but it's made for wine, is it?
It is made for wine, yeah.
Purpose built. Okay. All right. Cool. And if you could share a bottle of wine with anyone, living or dead, who would that be, and which wine would you open?
Yeah, I was thinking of writers because writers are always the people I like to talk to since I spend so much time researching them. And Evelyn Waugh was a famous English writer.
Another misanthrope.
Another misanthrope. He didn't like anybody, but he liked champagne, and
Yes.
he famously said that he would drink champagne any time of the day or night, with anything or without anything. So I'd like to have a glass of breakfast champagne with Yves Lenoir.
Beautiful.
And
Did he write Brideshead Revisited?
he did, yeah.
Okay, and there's a famous wine scene in that, and they talk about Burgundy being a shy little thing, and they go on and they open up because they're drinking from the parents' cellar.
Exactly. It's a beautiful scene, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. So yeah, he would be great, but maybe you could invite the other misanthropes, and they could get into a big argument. Graham Greene and Ainsley Kingsley Amos and Lenoir. If you could put up a billboard in downtown Tokyo, what would it say?
Right now, if I could put it up right now, I would say, could you turn down the heat, please?
Oh, you want a billboard that the big guy in the sky might see.
Yeah, hopefully. I pointed up that way. So it's about 36 degrees in Tokyo today.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
intense. Intense.
Too hot.
As we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to mention, Andy?
No, I think that's everything. Thank you very much for having me, Natalie. It was great talking with you, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a delight. Thank you. Great stories, great tips. And let's just regroup on how people can find you and your book online.
Yeah, so Cambridge Scholars Publishing is the name of the publisher. And if you go directly to their website, you can get a discount. I apologize for the book being expensive because it's an academic publisher, so they're targeting university libraries and not bookstores. So that's the reason for it. But you can at least get a 40% discount. And if you'd like to talk with me or communicate with me or see what I'm drinking, you can go to Instagram to Andy Wine 2021.
Okay.
So that's where you can find me.
Excellent, Andy. Well, I am going to say goodbye for now, but don't log off or hang up here because we'll just make sure that our conversation has fully uploaded to the internet. But thank you, and I hope that we can chat again. You have lots of great stories to share, and I really appreciate this.
Okay, thank you, Natalie.
Okay, cheers.
Okay, bye-bye.